So I'm here today at this fundraiser because of my brother-in-law, Gordon. And his story was he was having trouble with his left hand. One morning, he couldn't get his contact lenses in, and he thought it was like some repetitive motion, carpal tunnel thing, and he went to the doctor figuring he was going to get a cortisone shot. And the doctor examined him and told him that it's either a stroke or a tumor, and sent him to a specialist. They did an MRI, it revealed it was a glioblastoma. Doctor sent him to UCSF. That was a Thursday. The tumor was growing so quickly that he was operated on Sunday. And I saw the care he got. I mean, I didn't know any of this before this experience, but one of the primary determinants of your longevity with a glioblastoma is your surgical result, like how well you do in the surgery. And what counts is not just how much of the tumor they get rid of, but these tumors interact with the functioning of the brain, right? So it's not just taking out the tumor, it's doing it in a way that you minimize interference with motor skills and speech and hearing and vision and all that other stuff. And unfortunately, at other places around the country, because they don't do the sheer volume of these surgeries that they do here at UCSF, patients don't get the benefit of the kind of expertise that Gordon got here. And the surgeons at UCSF who work on brain tumors only work on brain tumors, whereas neurosurgeons elsewhere would do, spines and a variety of things. So we in our family felt very lucky that Gordy was in San Francisco and had access to that. If you're here, I think many of you might be familiar with the overall ethos of the place. From top to bottom, there's this real sense of mission. The best way I can describe it is, I hope this isn't insulting, I mean this in the best way possible. The doctors there are like doctors on TV. Do you know what I mean? Like it's a whole building of Dr. House, but from the early seasons before he went crazy. You know what I mean? Like they're super smart, they're doing everything they can, coming on Sunday, no problem. Think through an entirely way to treat your disease. That's the premise of the whole place. And one of the things that the money that we're raising tonight will do is go for a program that UCSF hopes will create a state-of-the-art program of a kind that doesn't exist anywhere else, that will not, they're dealing with the patients. This would deal with the people who are caring for the brain tumor patients as family members, and try to integrate them better into the treatment process. And to explain, I think the easiest way to explain why that's an important thing is to talk about what happened with Gordon. I did a little interview with my own sister, which is a really weird thing to do. But I did it. It actually wasn't that weird. And this is her.
The problem with any neurological disease, but particularly brain tumors, brain tumors are just different from other kinds of tumors because in the case of a glioblastoma, they're almost always terminal. And then in addition, the tumor is in the person's brain. So it affects their motor functioning, it affects their personality. I'm obviously not a medical person, but it became very challenging to deal with. And then there's all this medication and treatment on top of that. So, Gordon was on steroids for a while, as many brain tumor patients are. That has its own, set of issues. He was in full-blown mania at one point, which was really challenging.
His second tumor was in his frontal lobe, which affected his judgment and his sense of his self-perception. And like a lot of Gordy's friends are here tonight, a lot of people who knew him, and all of us who knew him and loved him know that even before he had a brain tumor, he had a very forceful personality. One of the things that I really adored about him is that he is a person who is always trying to convince you of something. Am I right? Whether it's you should be doing yoga, you should be investing with DFA. I've been meaning to ask the Congresswoman who's here tonight this. I would bet on the answer. I am confident that since she knew Gordy, even though she sat for years on the House Financial Services Committee, is a national expert on banking and financing issues. I believe that at some point he must have sat her down and tried to convince her, talk to her about her investments. That's my brother-in-law, who I love. And the way this manifests when his brain was enhanced with a tumor and steroids was one of the medical kind of like results of it. One of the things that actually impacted like his outcome was that Gordy would go in to talk to the doctors, and he would not necessarily present to his doctors what was really going on. He would kind of paint his Gordon picture of it, which was not exactly the same thing as the real picture. And like with driving, oh my God. There came a point where we in the family were all very worried whenever Gordy got behind the wheel.
Or said anything, not even like said boo, but just said anything, he would like kind of jump.
Yeah,
Or said anything, not even like said boo, but just said anything, he would like kind of jump. And so I could imagine him driving down El Camino.
When anybody came up on his left side, the quote isn't cueing right. When anybody would come up on Gordon's side from behind him, he would totally startle. He would totally startle, and we were worried.
Or said anything, not even like said boo, but just said anything, he would like kind of jump. And so I could imagine him driving down El Camino and somebody coming up on the left, which was his bad side, and honking the horn, and he could lose control of the car.
And so you wanted him to stop driving, and he didn't want to stop.
He thought he was fine, and it was a challenge.
When Gordon's doctor talked to Gordy about it, Gordon had his forceful personality, and he is the patient, right? And so unless he were declared incompetent, like there's rules about when you can force somebody to stop driving, and he didn't meet those, like until that point, what he said is what counts.
I think it exemplified for me this issue of my perception of what was going on and Gordon's perception of what was going on were different.
And the doctor's going to need to know that.
The doctor needs to know it.
It happened in all kinds of areas of his care. And Dr. Susan Chang, who's the director of neuro-oncology at UCSF, told me that what happened with Gordon and Randy, perceiving his situation differently, she said this happens all the time with brain tumor patients.
Patients themselves, when they meet with the doctor, they want to sort of put the best on. And that's just a natural, I think, what happens, you know. And you can sort of see in the room that the caregivers are just kind of shaking their heads, or they're like, no, you know. And so, you know, it's kind of like, okay, there's another story here. And, you know, it's very important to hear that story.
But right now, the way that care is organized, right, there's not built in a time for the caregiver to just say, like, here's what I think is going on. And it's not built into the doctor's schedule. As you can imagine, the doctors have to go from patient to patient. There's no formal process to evaluate what the caregiver is saying and whether it should become something to take into account in the treatment. And Dr. Chang says this is especially important because the tumor may work on the patient's ability to communicate or on their memory, so they don't even remember the side effects that they've experienced from one visit to the next.
Patients themselves, when they meet, we have to step back and say, you know, we really need to integrate the caregiver experience with the patient's care to optimize how we take care of our patients.
And so the idea is that Dr. Chang is going to use a portion of the money that we're raising here to hire a few people who will both talk to the caregivers and get their input, and to also help with issues that come up. But for a lot of patients, one of the big things is just like you have a person who you're living with who's dying, and just dealing with the insurance is a huge, huge problem. And UCSF has resources to help you with this, but like there's nobody to interface to make that happen. Dr. Chang is also going to hire somebody to do a study to determine if this whole approach of dealing with the caregiver actually leads to more effective treatment. Like, is it, let's quantify ways this is actually helping at all. And already they've put into place like this thing, which is one big step. Whenever you go in as a cancer patient for your next appointment, the first thing they do is they put you in the MRI tube, which takes 45 minutes. And the caregiver is just sitting there. And so now what they're doing is that they're debriefing the caregiver during that time, like right now before this money is happening. And I think at a lot of places, the caregivers would be seen as a kind of time suck for the doctor, like a kind of nuisance with all their questions and their requests and their thoughts, and they would not be seen as a source of potential information and a source of potential better treatment. And it shows a lot about the spirit of what's happening at UCSF, that when they were approached about this idea of like, couldn't something here better? Their response was like, great, let's see if that helps. How do we do that? So that's why I'm here today.